We did get the stimulus bill passed through Congress. $600 checks look set to hit consumer balances by the end of this week. Enhanced unemployment, $300 a week. That's going to be rolling out for the next 11 weeks. Brian Sozzi, though, you were looking at some research on what might happen if those $2,000 checks that we know the president wants, House Democrats have passed, a plan to get $2,000 checks out. Doesn't really seem like it's going to go anywhere in the Senate, but hey, might as well consider it. And look, last time I checked, 2,000 is more than 600.
Yeah, that's correct, Miles. And you know me, I love my large numbers in headlines. But let me run through these finer points from Jefferies economist Arnetta Markowska. In a note this morning, she noted $2,000 checks as opposed to $600 checks. That would be a 1% more boost to GDP next year. So that would take her estimate from about 5% currently for GDP to 6% next year, guys. But this is very interesting, and I definitely want to get your thoughts on this, Miles. She notes that $2,000 checks, as the president has clamored for in the House, they passed that yesterday, could shorten the distance to full employment and the Fed's 2% inflation goal by 2 to 3 quarters. So, Miles, that's impactful stuff by just increasing the amount of checks. Again, but I don't see any inflation, but even still, pretty important number there.
Well, something I wanted to bring up as well, that, we've been talking about throughout this whole pandemic, the whole idea of the K-shaped recovery and the outcomes being very different for people who still have jobs versus people who do not. And I guess if you look at these checks, it helps in the short term. But all of this talk and sort of navel gazing, if you will, about correcting systemic wrongs, whether it's racial injustice or economic injustice, this bill ain't it, right? It's putting a Band-Aid on some of those issues, but it seems like for all of the discussion about that, there hasn't really been any movement on that. We'll see if the next administration makes any moves in that direction, but there's been a lot more talk about sort of helping people not get evicted in the short term, for example, or helping people pay the bills in the short term, and a lot less about fixing the bigger issue of wealth inequality, it seems to me.
Julian, I had a good conversation yesterday at my local barbershop. Really, some of the best conversations happen at the barbershop. And they were talking about the stimulus plan, and they were saying $600 is not enough for their families. The guy actually cut my hair. He has 4 kids. He said $600 is not going to help me. That's barely a trip to Target, Walmart, or Costco. These are real Americans voicing real concerns. And whether you agree with President Trump or not, $2,000 for families like that from my local barber would be a heck of a lot better than a $600 check that doesn't get the job done.
The thing I would add, though, and I think that this is sort of where this all goes as we get through the next generation plus or whatever of politicians, people in America don't have enough money, considering the only thing that we deem of import in this country is having money. And so I think everyone wants to, I actually think in some ways, the folks who are focused on, it needs to be primarily about racial, equity or whatever. That's kind of running interference on. Yeah, but the problem is that we systemically make it such that people who are minorities tend to make less money and therefore have less opportunity, because the only thing that really defines opportunity in this country, again, is money. And so I think what's going to be really interesting is once you've given people 2 checks, couple $1,000s plus the enhanced unemployment in 9 months, how quickly do calls for that come back, especially if we now are working under this framework where, yeah, it's fine. That's what we do. We give our citizens money intermittently. And I don't know, I'm kind of sitting here being like, man, I thought Andrew Yang was such a joke a couple of years ago. And I think he's really onto something. And I think there's a reason why he was as popular as he was, considering he had no actual policy programs other than a $1,000 check a month, and would manage to get 5-6% of the vote in the Democratic primary. So big picture stuff, I think, that we're going to be talking about probably for the rest of our working lives.